Welcome to part 12, the final part of Pixinsight tutorials for absolute beginners. This is the final chapter of the Absolute Beginner series. Hopefully there'll be a part 2, which I might entitle Intermediate Beginners. So a little further than what we learned in the last 12 parts. So let's get started. Actually, this final video of the Absolute Beginner series is actually a trip back into the past. Why do I say that? Because we're going to go right to the very first video, which I should have done. That is just after blink and just after subframe selector. Remember that? Remember the subframe selector? Yes. Now, here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go to a new script which I haven't used, but everybody's been asking about all along, and it's the batch pre-processing. Right? So, at this point, with this script, what's this going to do? This is what everyone's been talking about to add your light frames, your dark frames, your bias frames, your flat frames, and this module process script is going to do all the work for you. Everything from taking them, calibrating them. Also, if they're mono, gray, FITS, CR2, DSLR, it's going to debayer them on the fly, align the stars on the fly or register them, and then stack them on the fly and create a master light with all these being calibrated, and it'll also create a master dark, master flat, and master bias. This video is going to attempt to make it as simple as possible and to explain a few things along the way so that you can get started. So at this point here, you've already blinked all your images. You found the jets and the clouds and the bad tracking, and the cat jumped on your OTA and then it jumped back off and you lost, 3 frames. Whatever. So you've done all that, and you out of your list of maybe 40 or 50 frames, when you use a subframe selector, you used full width half maximum FWHM, and you chose the lowest number. From 5 to 1, you probably chose 1, 2, or 3.0. The best, tightest, focused stars. And you went to the very first front of it and you renamed it and you called it ref for reference _ the rest of the file. Why? Because here's where you want to load that reference file. So let's work a little bit backwards. Let's go, instead of going lights, flats, darks, bias, and for those owners of Altair Astro 183C color or mono, you do not need to add the bias. Some do. Apparently we don't. I got it from good sources. So let's do this one step at a time. This may take, this video may be a little bit long, hopefully not. So if you made biases, or if you don't know how to make biases, then we'll have to make a video on that. But at least we know you got some darks and you tried to make some flats using my flats video, which is very difficult. It's not easy because of the light intensity and the shutter speeds. And of course you got tons and tons of nice galaxies, and that's what you want to calibrate. So let's get started. So let's go to bias. And a nice friend of mine gave me some files I can use. So here we go. Bias frames. In this case, a dozen or so. And let's add them in. Perfect. Let's go to the darks. Back up a directory. Dark. Select. Open. Let's go to the flats. Let's go back. Look for the flats folder. And this gentleman did a very, very good job of organizing all his folders and all named properly so they're easy to find in the same folder instead of chasing all over. And in this case here, there are two flats, two flat types, color, RGB, and just, mono grayscale. So obviously he didn't debayer on the fly. He just made them raw 12, which is fine. So let's just choose the flat gray at about half a second, 570 millisecond. For him, based on his light source and his t-shirt and his telescope and all kinds of variables that just drive us astronomers crazy for making flats. And then finally, our whatever, add lights, galaxy. So let's back up a directory, go to lights, all M101 for all intents and purposes. Okay, so a few things we keep in mind. We have to make decisions here on image integration, and that is based on the amount. Now, if you open up the integration parameter and you hover over here, there's a whole book here, but it's not that hard. I'll try to break it down without having to do this. It's like this. If you have less than 5 or 6 frames, use percentile. If you have 6 to 15, use sigma. If you use 15 to 100, Windsorized. That's about it, just those 3. Some people like using linear fit clip. You can experiment with that later. But by far and large, everybody likes to use sigma clipping, even though you're going to get a little message saying, oh, that's not a good idea. It would be better if it was Windsorized. Why? Because there's more than 15 frames. But for this, it's sigma. And these settings here, by default, here's what they normally show. My keyboard doesn't work. So this is 3. Sorry, here. Sorry, cancel that. And this is 3. Oh. This is the default for sigma clipping, and of course the combination is, for me, always has been average. I don't touch that. That's fine. Now low and high, simply. The more you pull this slider to the left, the more it's going to clip or remove satellites, jets, planes, gamma rays, even overexposed hard bright core stars. So, but don't hit it too hard. Remember we were at 3.00? What I like to use, and I've tried it many times, and you can leave 3 and 3. It's good. Actually, it actually says that high is 3 when you first start, and I believe low is 4. Right? 4.0? Okay. So let's just bring that back. So you can leave sigma around maybe 325. If you want, you can type it in, 325. It's just so that you leave the background, you're not going to attack the background so hard. But the high, bright jets and satellites and all those, you want to hit them pretty hard. So you're going to go down 2.80. Experiment. Try different numbers. High clipping factor, we know that. Okay, so you lower the slider, you hit it hard. If you slide that up, a lot of the jets and meteors and satellites, they're going to show up. So this is going to attempt to take them away, a lot of them away. That's all you need to know here. If we go to flats, sigma, because you only have, under 10 or 15. Darks, sigma. See what I said? 3, everything is 3. Bias, everything is sigma all across the board. Sigma clipping, that one. Now let's look at global option. I don't save my process log unless there's a problem I need to send it to Pixinsight. I'm good. At the moment, I did not create any master flats, master darks, and master bias. I'll make another video for that in the intermediate. That's a little bit more complicated. But what you want here is to watch these two. CFA, that's for color filter array, in other words, Bayer matrix, color cameras, and optimized dark frames. First, I'm going to talk about DSLRs, the Canons, all the Canon series of the DSLRs. If you have a DSLR and you shot in CR2 with Backyard EOS, or you shot with Sequence Generator Pro and it made fits, they're still gray. You have to enable this to make them color, as it's going to, on the fly, debayer your grayscale images to color. That does not apply to a mono camera. For those who have mono, don't click this, leave it off. Why? Because it can't create a color image out of a grayscale image. Right, so click that for color cameras. I believe this gentleman was using an Altair Astro 183 color. So I kind of have to enable that. Optimize dark frames. We're talking about just the darks here. Sorry, I'll call those. I shouldn't have clicked that. The darks. You optimize dark frames on Canon DSLRs T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6, T7, 5D Mark II, 7D Mark II, 60D. All of those, you can optimize dark frames. Do not check this if you have an Altair Astro camera. Why? Because we checked it, we tested it, it did not work. And if you leave it unchecked, it does a way better job. In fact, it does a very, very good job at removing all the amp glow and the side flare of the cameras. That's been tested by some people I know. And I use it. I use this do not check mark, do not optimize dark frames for Altair Astro cameras. And I'm sure maybe some other cameras, but if you check mark it and then you have all these amp glow at the end, you'll say, maybe I shouldn't have. So only for Altair Astro. If it's a DSLR, you can go ahead and try to optimize the dark frames for Canon and perhaps Nikon. So we have a color camera. We're going to CFA the image. In other words, debayer it. Remember we did it manually on part number, whatever, 2 or 3 or 4. Now it's done automatically. Now let's go back to our light. In here, had I did a blink check, or if I had done a subframe selector, one of these would say ref M101. I don't. So I'll assume that the third one is the best one. And see where it says registration reference image? Just double click on M101. Ta-ta. There it is. We've selected this as the supposedly best frame, and all these other ones will follow behind on this one if this was the sharpest, tightest, cleanest image. Now all this has to go somewhere. If you hit run, it's going to do a whole bunch of things and end up nowhere. So let's output all these files, the master dark, master light, master flat, master bias, to a folder. What should we call it? We should call it calibration, because this is exactly what it's going to do. It's going to calibrate all these files and put it in calibration M whatever, in this case 101. So I select it, and there's it. This is where it's going to output all its work, and this is going to be huge. If you have 50 frames and they're 40 meg, expect this folder to be 50 gig. Keep that in mind. It's going to be huge. Not always, but sometimes. If you bin 2x2, it might only be 900 meg or 1 gig, but I've seen this go up to 80 gig at any given point. Now, before you get all happy and you want to just hit run, because we're all excited, we want to see the result, we should hit diagnostics. This will validate everything we put in here. If there's an error, it'll come up and you should pay attention to the error. And I think I will get one, not an error, but more like a message saying, I see you're using Sigma clipping. I would suggest Windsorize. And whatever, it's up to you. It's your program, your software, your pictures. You can choose whichever one. Let's click diagnostics. Diagnostics complete. Everything is okay. All the files are the right temperature, the right speed, the right ISO, in maybe some cases the right binning. And Pixinsight's very happy with all this, so it's not supposedly not going to be any problems unless the lights are so dark that it cannot put them together or integrate them. We won't talk about that because we don't know if that's going to happen. Let's just hit run. Now keep in mind this may take 10, 15, 20 minutes. I may have to pause, but let's start it. So here we go. Okay, so it's going to look at the bias and the darks and the flats, and it's going to calibrate them and subtract them and divide them. And I'm going to now pause for a long time, depending on how speedy your computer is, and mine's not the best. And I'll be back in a few. So here we go. So when you're done, you're going to get a window like this. It'll come back up. And nothing wrong with that. That's normal. We just want to close it. It means that it's accomplished its purpose. Let's go see the result. So click anywhere in the middle here. Double click. Here we go. Let's see if we can go back to our file, which is C, TMP, and calibration master. So it created 3 folders: calibrated, registered. We can go look in there. Calibrated. So it made a bunch of flats, and they were divided out. Calibrated with the darks and bias. Excuse me. Let's get the terms right. Calibrated. The light frames. See the C. Calibrated by using the flats, darks, and bias. These frames have been debayered. They're now color, individually colored. And all this was done in the background for 10 minutes while we were doing something else. Registered, well, it's like this. The C stands for calibrated, so 230055_C for calibrated, darks, flats, bias. D for debayered, turned from grayscale to color RGB. R for registered, or aligned, all aligned but not stacked. Then finally, they all get stacked and get put into the master folder. So Pixinsight created a master bias, a master dark, a master flat, and the actual final image, which is 697 meg. Why? Because inside here there's 3 frames hiding: high clip, low clip, and the actual photo. Because we said clip out the high, bright satellites, jets, planes, gamma ray bursts, whatever. That's why it's almost 3 times the size. Now, someone said, well, hey, why can't we do another galaxy tonight? Because this is from last night or 2 days ago. Why can't we use the same bias frames? This time I'll have a master frame, a bias. Sure, no problem. Shouldn't be. What about the darks? No. Because last night it was, I don't know, 60 Fahrenheit. And in Canada it was like 21 Celsius. And tonight it's cold. It went down to like 12 Celsius or 43 Fahrenheit. These darks are no longer going to work. The darks have to be made right after the light. So they have the same temperature, same time. I can't stress this enough. Don't do the darks the next morning. Don't do the darks before you start the lights. Some people says, well, I'll do darks at 7 o'clock, and then by 9:30 I'll start my lights. Right. No, that's a cold camera. That's a hot camera. So let's try to follow the rules a little bit. The bias, I don't know how much temperature variance is important. I really don't know, and I really don't care, because I go in the order of light, dark, bias, and by the morning when the sun starts to come up, if I don't use my drafting board, I'll put 2 t-shirts or 4 layers of t-shirt, and as the sun's up, I'll point just in the opposite direction of the sun on a clear blue sky morning, and I'll shoot my flats at 50%, and they always divide out. Always. I don't know what it is with these so-called light boxes. They're not light boxes. We're making them by buying LED drafting boards, but they're not EL luminescent panels, which is a totally different source of light. So 2 things. You can spend no money and use the sun as it comes up, or as it's going down, or has just about to go down, or you spend X number of dollars, you buy a real flats box, and your worries are over. I'm getting so many emails saying, it didn't work. It didn't work. This video is not about that, but I need to mention it. Flats, They are little gremlins, and they are hard to deal with. I have been just 2 years now to try to tame that monster. And we're getting, it's better and better every time. And sometimes it's perfect because of the light source, and other times it's absolutely horrible, and I didn't change a single thing. So please don't give up. Keep trying. If you contact me, say, Mike, what settings should I use? I have no idea. I can't tell you. Why? Different camera, different telescope, different light train, different focal reducer, different light source. There's so many, there's 1,000 variables. I don't know what the answer is, but my video is still valid. 50% histogram, half of that ADU from 1 to whatever. Split it down the middle and try lower it down. Go 40%, 30%, right? Or make some brighter one. Go 60, 70, 80%, and then run them all one at a time and take some notes in a little book and notepad and say, okay, so the 800 milliseconds, they were horrible. They were white. And then the 100, they were so dark, the dust bunnies were worse. So and when you find the one that works, then don't change anything. Keep the same light, the same source, except the sun, it varies, and the same speed, 300 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, 800 milliseconds. Whatever you can do to make it work. Let's open up Light Binning 1, which is all that work that Pixinsight did for us that we didn't have to do manually, which would have took about an hour or two, and it did it in about 10 minutes. Let's open it up. This is supposed to be the result of all that work. We don't care how the darks for this work, or how the lights worked, or if the darks were subtracted, or if the bias, subtracted from the flats, or if the flats have dust bunnies. This is not the video for this. This is saying, look, we can use the script and have all this done automatically. So what does it say here? Rejection high. All right. Was there anything rejected? Let's have a look. Let's go screen transfer function. Wait a second. Doesn't seem to be. Now, notice there's a second screen transfer function, but it's a big booster. Let's hit that one. Let's super nuke it. And I'm going to zoom in. And there you go. You can see some high, bright pixels have been taken out. There you go. So that worked. Okay, so let's delete it. We don't need high rejection to keep. Here's low rejection. Let's, again, well, not nuke it once, but twice. Let's scroll in really close. I don't see anything. Why? Because remember, the default is 4. We went to 3.5. We could have gone 3.0. In fact, maybe 2.9 to remove some of the darker dead pixels, or not dead, because dead ones are usually bright white, but black pixels, or some dark matter that end up being in the way here. Which is why I say you usually take it easy on the low rejection. And here's the final result of the stack of 10 or 12 pictures. Again, screen transfer function, or if you wish, we can go down here, STF, move it over. Let's hit it once and have a look. Again, the purpose of this is to find a simple, fast, easy way to combine everything we have from the light, dark, bias. We don't use bias if we're using Altair Astro 183Cs or Ms, because we ran a lot of tests, and the bias noise is already in the dark, but at the risk of getting in trouble on YouTube, I will just simply say, for all you Altair Astro camera users, you can, but you don't have to use bias. I don't, and it works out very well. So here's the result. That's it, really. There's nothing to do after this except to go back to video number 3. So in other words, you've done the blink, and you've done your selector, and you've picked your best frame, and now you just integrated the entire thing using the batch script, batch processing, batch pre-processing, and you've assembled, and this is your beautiful image that you're done. And there might be all kinds of little mistakes, and there might see some dust, but oh, why didn't it work? Because it's an experiment in progress. I'll close this. There we go. This turned out really well. This is a beautiful galaxy. and everything worked well. The darks worked good. The flats they did as much as they could, and the bias is in there, but does it really matter? I don't know. I've compared two frames. I found that with the bias frame, sometimes it's a little smoother, a little bit less noise, but that could be nothing. So we're done. I'll leave you with all this, and subscribe down below. Tell all your friends. Don't forget to like and comment and hit that bell for upcoming videos. I hope I'll have some more interesting things to bring up. Probably start another series. This time there won't be a part 1 to part 6. It'll just be absolute intermediate beginners. So you've already gone through my 12 videos, and you go, okay, I've done this Mitch with my last 2-3 months, and it's great. Is there anything else we can learn that's simple but more advanced or intermediate? Sure, there's always something. Send me an email, say you'd like to learn this particular model, and if I say it's too difficult for me, then I won't. But if I say, yes, I've done this, and so I can make a short 30-minute video on a specific module like LRGB, not for mono cameras. LRGB has a lot of power that has nothing to do with mono cameras. We'll talk about that later. So that's it. Did you enjoy this? I did. I had fun making them. I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching the entire series, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Bye for now.